In this lesson, we're going to talk about the Disaster Recovery Planning, DRP. Now, it is an element of your internal control systems to manage availability, to restore critical processes in the event of some type of interruption. It can also be a continuous planning process where we try to use the most cost-effective controls to be able to prevent possible disruptions and to recover the capacity of an organization. We're going to talk about the recovery point objective and the recovery time objective, so what we call the RPO and the RTO. The RPO is determined based on acceptable data loss in case of disruption of operations. We can consider it as the earliest point in time that is acceptable to recover data. In other words, here's the crash. Boom, it's down. What is the minimum time, right, that I'm going to accept to get that recovery done? And again, it's the earliest point in time that is acceptable. After that, we start looking at what is the permissible amount of data loss in case of interruption, right? We start saying, after that point, we're losing data. Now, RTO is determined based on the acceptable downtime if a disruption of operations occurs. The RTO indicates the earliest point in time at which a business operation must resume after a disaster. Both of these are based on time parameters. Now remember that the lower the time requirements, the higher the cost of your recovery is going to be. There are some additional parameters that we can look at that can be defined for recovery strategies. One of them is called the interruption window, and it's the time that an organization can wait from the point of failure to that point of restoration. And after that time, the progressive losses caused by that interruption would become unaffordable. The service delivery objective is to get to the level of services that can be reached during an alternate process mode until restoration. In other words, can I do something by paper for a while until we get restoration or some other service? The maximum tolerable outages represents the most time an organization can support this processing of an alternate mode. So let's look at your recovery strategies. In fact, many times I tell people when they ask me, well, what's the best backup strategy I can have? And I tell them, I said, backup strategies should be built around the recovery strategies, because it's not a matter of, it took 8 hours to back up that server, it's horrible. It's about, it took 3 weeks to recover, we're dead, we're out of business, right? We don't mind the pain up front of what it takes to do backups if I can get a fast recovery. That's what it's about, recovery strategies. And they outline the best way to recover a system in case of interruption, and it's used for guidance that we have to each of the different recovery procedures that we need to develop. You might have a variety of strategies. In fact, you should have a variety developed. And all of the alternatives should be presented to senior management. And then senior management should select from that the most appropriate strategy that they have, and including the alternatives that are provided. Now, your strategy is, again, going to be dependent on how critical the business process that we're recovering, the cost, the time to recover, and security issues. Some of the strategies that you can see for recovery might include things like hot sites, warm sites, cold sites, duplicate information processing facilities, mobile sites, reciprocal agreements. A hot site is a building that has equipment, probably already has your software, maybe even your backups there. It's just not online. So if your building goes through a catastrophic flood, you can go right to that hot site, restore all your data because it's there, and your backup online, or at least you can get it from the vault. A warm site is a place that you already have. It's powered. It might have some equipment, not all of the equipment, so it's not quite that ready to go. You still have to bring stuff over. Cold site, you've got to lease on a building, and you got to bring and build it all up. Duplicate information processing facilities we see in large-scale financial realms, where they have a data center in different parts of the country, so that if they lose any one building, the next one's still going. If they lose a power grid, still going. I saw a mobile site. I actually kind of helped work with it in the county that I live in many years ago in the 80s. They wanted to back up to their 911 center. And so they had a mobile site. They had a big RV that had room for 3 dispatchers to sit into. They had radio capabilities. They had a generator that would power an actual antenna. They'd set the antenna up. They had the ability to plug into any of the central office switches to be able to trunk in and get those 911 calls. It was really kind of cool. They had all that stuff. It was their mobile site. So they used it if the main site went down, if they lost power at the building got taken over, they could still deploy, they could still do that stuff. And this was the 80s that they were planning for this stuff, right? So it's still pretty cool. Reciprocal agreements. Well, keeping in that mode, here's a common one you can all relate with. If we're looking at fire departments at the edge of the city limits, right? I got 2 cities, 2 fire departments. And this fire department in city number 1 goes out to a fire, and they get really busy, and it's huge. And suddenly another fire erupts, but there's nobody in that station because they're fighting a fire. They would have a reciprocal agreement with the neighboring city that says, in case we're out and busy or we can't handle it, would you come in and take care of it? And they'd say, yep, sure, we'll absolutely do that. You take care of us, we take care of you. Kind of the same thing in the networking. Reciprocal agreements, maybe borrowing the services of another network or another facility that you can use as a part of a recovery. Now, your strategies for recovery should have a look at the contractual provisions for the use of a third-party site. Number 1, configurations is a part of would they facilitate what the company's needs are as far as the way it's set up, racks, plug-ins, power. That's sort of part of the configurations. We need to know the definition of a disaster. Is it an exclusive facility, or do we have to share it with others? Which could be really bad if it's a big emergency, a big disaster. Suddenly everybody might be moving in. Will the facility be available to the company without delay? How soon after the disaster will the facility be available? Who gets preference if there's more? If it's a common regional disaster and you got lots of people that are going to potentially use it, who gets preference? What's my usage rights? Do I have the proper communications available? Do I have the right to audit it? What testing rights are included? What are the reliabilities of that site? Is the site secure? All parts of what you should look at contractually as you put it together.